we have, thank you, Piper, for getting us recording. So, just because we are recording, I'm going to ask Aaron to put in a little disclaimer about us recording your images and your voice into the chat. So this is an exciting day for me and for the Cultureworks team as we kick off the Cultureworks annual grants program. Cultureworks' mission is to strengthen artists like yourselves and arts and culture organizations to drive a greater impact in our community. One of the key ways we're able to do that is through funding opportunities through our annual grants program. This year, it's even more exciting for us because we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts that has at least doubled the size of our typical annual funding pool. And that is really exciting. We also have Altria and the Community Foundation for a Greater Richmond have also committed funding. So we're really excited about what that means. Just because there's more money, though, doesn't mean it's going to be any less competitive. We're casting a wider net because we want to make more impactful grants, but we do want to reach as many folks as we can. So you want to be able to put your best foot forward with your application to make it the most competitive application that you can. And that's why we're here today, so that Condra Parker, our Director of our Grants Program and Development, can share with you the application process, the eligibility requirements, and all the detail, well, many of the details that go into making a great application. Know that as we go through this process, for many of you, this might be your first grant. I urge you to rely on Condra and myself and the team to ask the questions that you need to ask to get the help that you need. We want to help you be as successful as possible through the application process. You know, many funders talk about, you know, we can be perceived as looking for the thing in the application that causes you to not get funded. But I think at Cultureworks, we are the opposite of that. We are looking for every opportunity to say yes to a funding opportunity. We're obviously limited to how much money we have, so we can't make every award, and that's one of the most frustrating parts of the job. But we do want to see everyone be successful to have the greatest impact in our community. So let's see. I think that's everything I wanted to say in terms of opening remarks. I will just on an administrative note, just ask you to, we got a decent number of people on the call here. So I'll ask you, put your question, keep your mics on mute and put your questions in the chat. And then Condra can try and answer some of those during the presentation. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A period to be able to go through the questions that are in the chat. And if for any reason we don't get to a certain question, we will certainly follow up with you after the webinar. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to, oh, and when you do your, I see Aaron getting ready to unmute. When you do put your questions in the chat, please address them to everyone so that everyone on our team can see those questions. And with that, now let me turn things over to Condra Parker, our Director of our Grants Program and Development.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Condra Parker. I've been with Cultureworks for almost 3 years, along with my colleague Aaron. And I am also an artist. I am a textile artist and a quilter. Sam, I spy that quilt behind you, of course. It's gorgeous. We're going to talk later. And I would like to emphasize that today, unlike previous years, this is just for artists. So if you're representing an organization, the organization's session has been recorded. You would want to look at that one specifically. This is specifically for professional artists. So if you fit that category, let's roll. So Piper is my assistant today, our new staff member. Thank you, Piper. We could have the first opening screen. And we can hop one screen forward. So as Scott shared, here is our mission again, and it's on the website. I am proud of this wonderful mission. to strengthen you as professional artists in this region. And this is accomplished through the 4 key things that you see here. And of course, today we're addressing grant opportunities. Next slide. So we're going to go detail, but not as much detail as you. This doesn't preclude or prevent you or serve the substitution of you going and doing your own deep dive in the guidelines for artists. And we strongly encourage that you do that. There are significant changes. Some of you are grant awardees from past grant cycles, and this is very, very different from our past, which is a very good thing, as you will see, or it will be revealed to you as we go through the slides. Next slide. So we Cultureworks ingrained in our strategic plan and in through everything we do. We value diversity and inclusivity, and we want to elevate different voices in underrepresented communities and also from underrepresented target groups. Next slide, please. So this grant program, we do provide funding for both, as I said before, for both organizations. You all are the artists. You must be based, and in your case, residing in and serving communities that are in the Richmond and the Tri-Cities region. Here is the definition of our region. It is set. These are the 12 localities we serve, and that's ingrained in how Cultureworks as an organization was set up. This has always been our service area or our geographic area. Next slide, please. So this cycle, funding is made possible through foundations, corporations. Scott, if you want to do an interjection right now of who is sponsoring our wonderful 2022 cycle.
Sure. So we have the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as Altria and the Community Foundation for a Greater Richmond. Really excited to have our partners on board, and still always looking for more partners as well. If anyone knows anyone that we should be talking to, let me know.
Thank you. So very, very excited about our funding pool this year. Next slide, please. This is a look of our annual grants program over since 2010 through 2021. We have awarded 65 grants through the annual grants program over the last 11 years. But you are in a very, very special category in that we have awarded many, many more grants, upwards of almost 300 as a result of our COVID relief funding last year. That wasn't through the annual grants program, but that was a special opportunity to help our artists in that, through these times. The COVID relief fund was, and so we were very, very fortunate and blessed to be able to support the arts and culture community in that way. So here is the annual grants program. Moving on, next slide. So the notice of funding opportunity is the same thing as the guidelines for the grant program for organizations and professional artists. They are 2 different documents. Be really, really careful. They look a lot alike. Make sure you click on the right one for artists, and you can take it from there. But this document for artists, it will contain all the key information, eligibility, how we fund, when, basically, so that you can get some semblance of when you would receive funding to start the implementation of your programming, all the different application components, Very, very important this year, there's new terms and conditions because of the attachment to the federal funding. Review criteria, what our volunteer review panel will be using to rate your application, and everything else that is critical to you presenting a successful application that will be considered. Next slide, please. So this is the key thing, explanation. This has not changed for Cultureworks. You must be a professional artist. And here is the definition of a professional artist. The application is also infused of cases where, especially when we start to talk about artistic merit and artistic excellence, but this is what a professional artist is for Cultureworks. It may differ from other funders. This, for the purpose of our programming, this is the definition that we use to determine what a professional artist, who a professional artist is. Next slide, please. So you must be 18 years old. College students are, or college students, undergrad or grad, are not eligible. Applicant has at least a 2-year history of public engagement, presentation or publication, or exhibits. That is what we're referring to. You must be the lead artist in every aspect of the project. And you as an individual cannot have been disbarred or suspended from receiving federal funding. Next slide, please. As I said, for the artist, it means that your space is a residence in the Richmond and Tri-Cities region of Virginia. You cannot be an artist outside of our region planning to come and do an exhibit or a performance or a poetry slam or anything like that. You must reside in one of our communities. And you must plan to do so throughout the 1-year process, because you are benefiting, your presence is a part of the landscape of arts and culture. And we want you to receive the benefits as well as the community benefits from your very presence. So you must produce arts and culture that benefits, as I said before, and focuses in that same area. Be a US citizen with a social security number that once you are awarded it, you would provide that information in the form of a W-9. That is what is needed for. And specifically, the funding is used between July 1st and June 30th of 2023. You cannot apply and say, well, I did start the project, or I started the phase 1 of the project and I have some expenses that I had to do to before the project started, and they were purchased in May or April, and I was pretty sure I was going to get the grant, and those will not be allowable. Receipts, work, everything must be within the fiscal year in order to receive credit for the fiscal year. And unfortunately, that's not how a lot of you, I understand. I have to buy my fabric ahead of time for an exhibit, but it cannot be counted unless it's done within that fiscal year. And I would gladly talk to anyone who has further questions about that. Next slide, please. Building capabilities and cultural equity. Here are wonderful examples of artists and organizations that we funded recently, and we're so proud of the impact that they've had on these communities. These are gorgeous examples and we're proud to be a part in partnership with the organizations and the artists. Going forward, next slide. So, building capabilities and cultural equity both are continuing focus areas. Let's talk a little bit about building capabilities. If you've received a building capabilities grant before, it pretty much has basically the same criteria with a little tweaks. But A building capabilities grant will be requesting support for studio space improvements, equipment that would take your artistry to the next level, and you're able to clearly communicate how that would happen in the type of equipment, or the preparation for an exhibit. That is a very popular and funded project, is a preparation for an exhibit that benefits especially the ones that benefit underrepresented communities, even though this is building capabilities. Special needs related to ongoing health and safety. We totally understand the challenges, the missed gigs, the rescheduling of exhibits that you all have faced as artists, and we commend you for still being there and contributing. And so whatever we could do to help, make it safer and encourage the rebuilding of audiences through your work, you could apply for a grant for that. And finally, improving technology related to practicing your specific art discipline. These are just examples. And if you have an innovative approach or innovative idea, we will be glad to talk about that. Okay, moving on. So this is the good thing about this year. It is $6,000, up to $6,000. Let me be really, really clear, up to $6,000 for an individual artist. And that's new. In the past, it's been $3,000. Thank goodness we were able to, for this grant cycle, increase it to $6,000, because we had gotten some input from you all and we listened. Can you consider supporting, because I have costs beyond what the 3,000 could do. And so now we are at this level for this year. Next slide, please. Cultural equity is the projects or programming that reaches underrepresented populations. And these are the examples in an arts and culture environment, but we're going to clarify how that's represented through a stipend on the cultural equity side. But here are examples, and they're not limited to these examples. And again, on the cultural equity side, we've increased it from 3,000 to 6,000. Next slide, please. So when we say the grant funding supports underrepresented populations, these may be based on one or more of the following categories, and they're listed here. This is all in the guidelines. Next slide, please. So if we talk about some allowable costs on the side of cultural equity, qualified individuals for artist fees and stipends. Artist fees and stipends that support the services you provide for specific programs and activities. This is somewhat different. It has to be attached to programs and activities, a creation of an artwork, something with a tangible outcome. It must be have a tangible outcome if it is a work of art. If it's a specific phase of a project, you would clearly show that in your application. This is considered a stipend to the artist for work undertaken and completed. Next slide, please. So this is the breakout. Even though it's a stipend, it's not, I guess, a general, just do whatever you want sort of situation. The stipend can include your hours expended for your work. If you have to contract for a process for your piece of work to be completed, or professional fees, studio rental time, and I may be clear, studio rental time, not inside of a house that is a residence, but a studio rental time where it can be clearly seen that you're renting a studio as opposed to paying part of your mortgage or part of your rent. Health and safety supplies, marketing and promotion for the specific project. Next slide, please. So unallowable costs, and I was kind of alluding to that. It cannot be an artist relief program similar to our COVID relief fund, where the funding is used to alleviate your financial hardship, to pay your rent and food, your lost revenue. And it can't be for something that is not requiring you to actually do work. It can't be an honorific, can't be seen as an honorific or an award or anything like that. There are plenty of other programs like that. So you have to have, again, it goes back to a tangible outcome from the project that you are pursuing. Alcoholic beverages, commercial enterprises, you can't invest the money to open up an online shop to sell your items. That's not an allowable cost. It can't be as a reception or your event opening. It can't go towards that. The next slide, please. Again, can I go for rental costs for home office workspace, or in your case, home office studio owned by individuals? And if you have received funding from, and these are examples of what an artist could receive in our area. If you've received anything from our state agency, which is Virginia Commission for the Arts, or our regional arts agency, which is the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation, or any other, even if you've received something from the National Endowment for Humanities, and it is a cost that you have covered in that grant, it cannot also be covered with this grant, okay? So, I mean, parts of it, if you said 50% of a contract would be covered in this grant, and then you had already a grant that covered 50% of it, that is allowable, but you really do need to keep specific and detailed records along those lines. We want to avoid what the federal government calls for planting, paying twice for the same thing, and that's strictly not allowed. So I really would encourage you to refer to Appendix A in the Cultureworks, and it says organization guidelines. Sorry, I apologize for that. It should say Cultureworks artist guidelines for a complete viewing of unallowable costs. Moving on. There's also federal compliance requirements for individuals. If you are engaged with something that your project is engaged with in another organization or in a space, the expectation is that you would follow these federal guidelines. You can't be in a space that would discriminate based on race, age, gender, or any of those federal, or for any reason. A lot of you do murals, and we know there's a local process in our localities for permissions to do public art. You not only have to be familiar with that, but you also have to be familiar with the federal requirements and there will be a separate form for environmental and historic preservation to ensure that you aren't painting on a place that has been designated as a in the Federal Register or along those lines, or neighborhood or community that historically wants to keep its facades or its integrity with the historic period. So you can understand that. The debarment and suspension for receiving federal funds, we already talked about. It has to be a drug-free workplace and free from lobbying. So you would need to look at the guidelines at Appendix C for a complete listing of all the federal compliance requirements. They will be listed there. Next slide, please.
Hey, Condra, let me pause there for a second. So something I wanted to say in my opening remarks and forgot, but relates to this federal compliance thing. So this is a very new part of the Cultureworks grants program because it's the first time we've included federal funding. And I'll tell you, when I first looked at Cultureworks applying for the federal funding, and I read through their rules on these things, I was like, holy cow, how can we do that? And how could our artists and organizations ever do that? But what I will say is I think it's about showing that you have to comply with them, yes, but you need to comply with the overall point of these regulations. When you start reading them, there's all these details, and many of them won't apply because of the level of funding that you'll be getting, right? So, I mean, a lot of them kick in at $250,000. We're not making $250,000 grants here, as an example. So I urge you not to let this scare you off. I encourage you still apply, even if you're wondering, like, yes, you need to have a plan for generally, how are you going to show that you don't discriminate? How are you going to make sure that you fill out the form for historic preservation and listen to what Cultureworks and the NEA might tell you as a result of that, right? But I think all of these things are achievable, given the scope of work that we'll be doing with the level of funding that we're talking about. So don't let these federal things scare you off. Yes, have a plan for complying, but don't let it scare you off. And Condra's going to say later too, we're going to have, for those that receive awards, we're going to have a webinar after awards are made to talk more about how to efficiently comply with these requirements. Thanks.
Definitely. Thanks, Scott. Next slide, please. So how do you apply? You visit the Cultureworks website, you download and read the guidelines. And I'm just quickly going through this because guess what? We're going to have a little tour of our online grant system. So we access the Cultureworks online application. Just want to emphasize, I will probably say this more than once, if you've ever applied for a Cultureworks grant since 2019 in our system, regardless of whether you received the grant or not, you already have an account. Please do not create another account, because the first thing, if it happens, you will tell me, well, I can't get to my other previous grantable application. I kind of wanted to see that. And my question is, did you use the previous account? Now, you as individuals would have applied as yourselves. If you as individuals would know, I changed my email since then or something like that, I can definitely assist you with that. But please do not create a brand new account. Let me help you with that, and let me help you early on, so that then, I'm not helping you on March the 23rd or March the 24th. I want to give you ample time. So you take the eligibility quiz and you complete and then it says, yes, you are an eligible artist. Then you complete the required task and uploads, you review and submit, and we will go into detail of what that looks like. Next slide, please. You will need to complete all narrative fields. You will need to give quality answers. This is not, I will tell you, we are all differently gifted. This is the time for you to use all of the communicative gifts that show what you're trying to do. And you need to take the time to be able to do that. Our successful applicants have answered the questions in more than a couple of sentences. That is what our reviewers are going to be looking for. It can't be, well, I uploaded all of my work and it's great and they gotta love me, but yeah, take your time with this. Work on it offline and put your vision to words. And if you need assistance, please call me very early on so that I can provide that assistance, and I'll show you how you can do that. You would upload required attachments, your professional artist resume that would show all the examples of artistic excellence, dates of your exhibits, collaborations that you've done, outcomes, pieces that you've done. And then we require a portfolio, samples, electronic images. I know for some of you all, you have had issues with uploading video performances. I think we've gotten through that, but we would need you to try to get to that early on to make sure that, because that's towards the end of the application. And I would want to know that very early on if you were having troubles uploading your videos. Okay. Now, what's very, very important is to upload that, and those of you who have juried work, you have submitted portfolio descriptions of each piece. Please properly number them so that when the reviewers go in, they can tell what belongs to which piece, okay? And those are in the form of individual documents, okay? Next slide, please. So if it's applicable for cultural equity, if you're planning to do a project in an underrepresented community, and let's say you are trying to partner with a public school in a school that's located in an underserved community, you would get the permission from the highest level of person possible. It would not be a classroom teacher. It would be at the very least the principal. And try to get it, which is yet another reason to try to get early. We know our principals are extremely busy, given the current environment with the type of safety, let's just say the type of safety issues, that challenges of the current environment, and our teacher unions. This is something that you need to even consider that could happen, that's even possible for a school. I would hate for you to put in hours of preparation. You contact the principal and the principal tells you they're not letting anybody inside the building. That was very, very real in 2020, and most of 2021, it still may be real. And it will vary from school to school, building to building, system to system. Okay, if you've seen one, you've seen one. So please do the research up front to get those permissions. If anyone who's providing you, or even if it's a nonprofit, if they're providing another nonprofit, you're a nonprofit, space to do the project, a target group or audience to participate in the project's activities is guaranteed, and any other critical resource that's requirement to actually successfully do your project. You would hate to get far and then all of a sudden it can't happen because you don't have the space, you don't have the participants. You have to make sure all of those things will come together, because you can put all the work into the artistic vision and the project. And if it can't happen, we would want you to invest wisely your time and efforts. Next slide, please. So example of a full commitment and support is if the executive director or the top staff person, not the director of programs, not a volunteer of ABC nonprofit, provides a letter on official agency letterhead signed by the top person that states that Artist X or Organization Y has been granted permission to carry out Project Z during, let's say it's an after-school program. This is just one example. Once a week from this time to this time. We need to see specifics. We have to know that it's happening. And like I said, on official letterhead and signed by the top person in that organization. And top person, not the board chair, but the top person in the building, the top operations person, which is usually the executive director or CEO of that organization. Okay, next slide, please. As I said, please consider all the time that it would take to get school approvals, to get public art project approvals. You need to provide that documentation that the project has been approved before grant funding can be awarded. And I will tell you what public art issues. And this is public on public places, not necessarily on private buildings. Okay. These review boards do not meet every month. They don't meet on a regular basis. So obviously we're in an application phase right now. You would hope to immediately find out when the next, if you can get on the docket or on the agenda for review, okay? So there's a lot of pieces to consider, okay? Most of all, you need to be realistic about the limited opportunities for in-person programming, especially when it comes to our kids, due to safety restrictions. And when I say our kids, of course, I'm a former teacher, in schools. So outdoor programming is an option. Summer programming is an option. But all those things in which you are well aware that safety protocols are in place for the participants. Next slide, please. So when we come to the review criteria, and when I say this, I don't make the determination of who gets a grant. Scott doesn't, Aaron doesn't, none of our staff does, Daniel, none of us. We have a volunteer review board that reviews all of your submissions, all of your grants. For building capabilities, they will be looking at capacity, whether it's realistic that you can do this grant based on, they could really scan your project budget and say, and you say, I plan to serve 2,000 kids in the month of August or something like that. We know that that's not a match in capacity. So be very realistic about who you're able to serve. Audience development. Is this a project that the community that you are offering to has some type of input and would be interested in this project? That's a strong example of a successful project, that that what you're about to do or offer would be welcomed and well received, and you would have the participation in that space or for that group that you're planning to have it for. Your management accountability, yes, you as artists, you've taken workshops on this, how to manage your time and your budget. If you have a project budget and it has this huge expense, like we plan to use gold leaf on the kids' little sculpting projects. Well, that's an extreme example, but it is definitely an example of something that if the reviewer says, this is kind of not in place with what a project should look like. Because remember, our reviewers are artists like you, are representative from corporations, foundations, and in the community. So many of them have reviewed many times for different organizations. So they know what to look for in a project, an overall project, of how it seems that it would come together and be executed successfully. So artistic excellence and artistic merit are still a part of the building capabilities grant. artistic excellence and artistic merit are clearly defined in the guidelines, but I just wanted to tell you, it's on page 8 of the guidelines. Please read about artistic excellence and artistic merit as they relate to artists, because artistic excellence is going to be that you are able to demonstrate a strong body of artwork creation over several years, show past community engagement through your exhibits or your programming. You show a breadth, quality, and creation of your past work. We can clearly see your growth as an artist, and you present a clear and artistic vision. And it's artistic merit is basically the degree to which the request aligns to what Cultureworks strategic plan, meaning we can see that your project is encouraging a greater community participation in arts and culture. You're not a hermit in your art. You are out there and in the arts and culture community. Especially for cultural equity, there is clear evidence in your proposal that shows that cultural equity, you're increasing cultural equity across the region. And also it exemplifies that you are going to be a part of our efforts to strengthen artists and communities within the creative and cultural environment. We do have a copy of our strategic plan. And again, you can click on that on our website, or you can see how to get to a copy of our strategic plan on through the guidelines. Next slide, please. So the review for criteria for cultural equity, cultural equity focus is authentic. It is evident that you have that this is the type of work that you have had experience in doing, and that you are knowledgeable about best practices and innovative programming that serves underrepresented communities, that you know the population that you are serving, whether it be the different abilities community, Black or Hispanic, or anything dealing with race or ethnicity. But we see an authentic, not just authentic desire, but authentic evidence that the programming that you have done, you've done your research, and you have the experience to serve that population and serve that population well. So it lends also to audience development. We're going to be looking at age-appropriate activities for, if you say you're targeting elementary school students, there's former educators such as myself on these panels. We know what age-appropriate activities are, and it's very, very important. So that's just one example. What you're doing for that target community, that target community has given some input or some indication that is what they want in their communities. Management and accountability, same as building capabilities. And again, artistic excellence and artistic merit, as I reviewed, you are showing that you demonstrated a strong body of artwork and your past community engagements, and your growth as an artist. Next slide, please. So if you are awarded, here is where we would need that information: your social security number, an IRS form W-9, and we will provide to you a document that you are in agreement with all the terms and conditions, especially of federal funding, as stated in the guidelines. There will be, as Scott said, there will be a post-award webinar, mandatory, to assist with optimal compliance with requirements for federal funding before we would initiate your funds. We have to know that that you are an understanding of the stewardship that you are about to partake in, because obviously Cultureworks, as a pass-through federal agency, we have to report to the federal agency, which is the National Association, National Endowment of the Arts. Thank you. Next slide. Again, the grant period, July 1st through June 30th. That is the government, that is our mandatory requirement for this entire grant program. And I do realize it might not fit an individual's schedule, but this is the box that we have to put our awardees in because of federal funding. And if you've done the research, federal funding to individuals is very rare and very restrictive. I think we are a little less restrictive than some of the examples that I have seen. So grant funds must be used for the purpose described in the proposal. That is another reason it has to be well-researched and realistic. Any modifications or changes to the purpose must be reported to Cultureworks in advance. Those modifications and changes would not be coming to Cultureworks in May of 2023. They would be done very early on in the first quarter in advance. Failure to do so may result in forfeiting funds back to the program. And here's the next screen will show the checkpoint that we have. Next slide, please. Mid-year progress reports. We've always required these. These are mandatory. And we can't give much leeway on it because we have to show evidence, again, especially with cultural equity grantees receiving federal funds. These are mandatory. This is the check-in point mid-year that we would know how you're advancing on your project. Your project would be finished by June 30th, and the final report will be due no later than 30 days after the end of the funding period on July 31st, by July 31st, 2023. Now, many of you do have specific projects that are kind of on the short-term side, and you may be finished your project by December 31st, 2023. I would walk you through how to submit your final at that time, and that is fine to do also. If the project finishes up early, gladly walk you through how to close out the project and everything. But we will go more in detail about things like closing out a federal project during the webinar if you are awarded funding. Next slide, please. So any recipient of either billing capabilities or cultural equity, as always, should attribute the Cultureworks annual grants programming. When you all do this, and I see our grant recipients doing this, and it's wonderful to see where the Cultureworks logo pops up. I love it in your program for your event or on your website. There's example. If you go to Cultureworks website and you see at the bottom, we are supported by, and it shows all the ways that we give credit to those who support us. And we appreciate those of you who do what you do in your socials, on your web pages, on your program, your printed material. But for cultural equity grant awardees, especially, acknowledgement of Cultureworks and the National Endowment for the Arts must be made in all published materials, and here are the examples, and all announcements regarding the particular activities or activities supported. If you need assistance with that, we have a wonderful marketing team here and we can help you with that. But it needs to happen because the federal government will be looking for that. The National Endowment for the Arts definitely does require that. Next slide, please. So before I go through the walkthrough, are there any questions that I can answer right now? And Piper, if you see any questions right now that I could answer. I see the chat.
I see questions, but I thought we were waiting until the end, Condra, for that.
We did. I should have. We can address a couple right now.
All right. Alyssa Solomon, if you are by the computer, and just in case there are some follow-ups to this, she says, thank you for this presentation. Is the prohibition on commercial activities only for cultural equity? For instance, in preparing for an exhibition, must none of the works be offered for sale?
Oh, that is very different. You offering, because in an exhibit, you would have NFS on a piece, or we're talking about commercial in trying to buy inventory or trying to use your artwork as inventory to have an online actual sale. But we can talk about that. That's a very good question. Let me think about that a little bit more, and I can talk to you. But specifically, as I have it set up, it's like a commercial enterprise. Like you're intentionally doing production work, production pieces, creating one little thing that you're trying to sell online. Scott, did you want to have an input into that answer?
I saw that question earlier. I think we need to confirm. I think the answer is that it's okay, but I want to confirm that with the NEA's grants office. So let us do some homework and get back to you on that piece.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also,
Aaron,
I saw one other eligibility question in there about can an artist basically collaborate with another artist and pay them? And the answer is yes, you can. We're only making a grant to one artist, right? So the artist who applies would receive the funds, and then that artist would be responsible for any IRS reporting, tax reporting, that kind of thing to the, with respect to payments to the other artists. And the other artists would have to be contributing to the creation of that tangible art product that Condra talked about before, right? So the application is for this tangible art product, and the grant would be made to one artist, and then it's up to that artist to determine how they allocate the funds to the other artists. Another consideration would be, we would want to know, if you know who those collaborators are, it would be helpful to attach samples of their work and their resumes to the application as well. Condra, anything else you would add to that one?
That's another thing that we would have to also clarify with the grants office, to see if we require W-9 information and everything to that person that's then getting a sub grant from the grantee. So
that's actually one that we have asked the grant office already. I went back and checked my notes, Condra, and we no, we do not need the W-9 from the partners, just from the lead artist. You as the lead artist would want to make sure that you're doing any W-9s that are 1099s to those artists, if they were required.
Okay.
All right, and Alexis said thank you, and so did Alyssa, and they asked both of those questions. So they said thank you. Alyssa also said, back to her first question, because of so much of what we as artists now has an online component, this is really an issue for professional artists. And they both said thank you. So if there's anybody else that has questions, just pop them in the chat and send them to everyone, and we will get to all of them at the end of the session.
Thank you. So we're going to walk through the online grant application. Next slide, please. So here is what the grants forward page on our website, the grants page, has all the information. You see there's the deadline, February 7th through March the 24th. And here is the lovely button that gets you into what I call grants world. So it will open at 9 o'clock on February 7th, which is Monday. You would click on this button and it will take you to the opening screen on the program. Next slide. The welcome landing area. Look up here in the top right. If you are brand new and have never registered for an online grant, or have never applied, you would press the green button. If you have applied or even started I do have a lot of incomplete applications. If you've ever started an application, you're already in the system, you already have a account. So you would click on that and you will follow the instructions that will show you if you've forgotten your password or if you still remember your password. Next slide, please. Okay, here is the Surveymonkey Apply is our product. You would put in, if you are registering, this is for the screen for the first time applicant, okay? And it's notice the screen is still telling you up here at the very, very top right. If you already have a Surveymonkey Apply account, log in. Because again, we don't want duplicated accounts or anything like that. So you fill out the information. And the organization one does not apply to you. So that's a good thing. Okay. Go to the next slide, please. So you are applying for one program only. One program only. I cannot emphasize that enough. I don't know how we would deal if we got 2 applications from a person, because we really are expecting a large volume of applications, and the system would have a double application. I wouldn't know how to handle that. I guess call you and, but it would be after the deadline. So please avoid that call and please only submit one application. So you are clicking on the artist, definitely. Now, the thing is, some of you all may be artists that have a 501c3. Okay, you are either applying as an artist or an organization, not both. And as an artist, you're only applying for one application. Okay, click to the next screen. So you would put the title of your project here. I'll note that you can't change the name of the title once you put the title in. I have seen people thinking that they could come back to the name of the title and say, my project or something like that. And then that will require you calling me and me having to go into the system to change it. I am willing to help you, but I would like to spend my time helping you with deeper things that make your grant application more successful. So if you could think out what the title of the request is, that would be great up front. Okay, next slide, please. When you first go into the application screen, you will see that there is a long list of what's called tasks. Tasks are just sections of the grant. This system considers the different sections of the grant as tasks. All the tasks have to be complete for the grant to be completed. Okay, right now you see review and submit. I will say that you won't get to that part until the very end of the grant application. For now, the first thing you do is, if you could go in order, now the system will let you click ahead and go work on this and work on this. But what happens is it gets very muddy as to where you are. And definitely you have to complete the eligibility form first. So you click on eligibility, and next slide, please. Again, here at the bottom, save and continue editing, mark as complete. You will see that at the bottom of each screen every single time. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is what the tasks then populate in the field or your screen. So from now on, the task that you're working on appears on your screen, and the task list appears in a long column that I call the task list. And eligibility questions. You would answer all of those questions that are in the guidelines are here. And you must meet all of the criteria to advance to the application. Next slide, please. Here is how you would do that. Next, you would click on the next section from this bar here, and you will fill out the artist information. Next slide, please. You must be aware that where that yellow arrow is, you would click on it to move down and scroll down your taskbar. If you notice that it says 3 out of 7 tasks complete, but you don't see 7 tasks there, you see 6. You get to everything by moving down and scrolling down that taskbar. So you then fill out our application summary information. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here is where we come to whether or not you have decided that you're applying for, you've already decided that you're applying for either the Building Capabilities grant or the Cultural Equity grant. You click on that and mark as complete. Next slide. And what appears if you are applying for the Building Capabilities is that you see all of a sudden the Building Capabilities application form and the Building Capabilities artist budget form. Please take your time and communicate in depth. Use all of the characters, but at the same time, be very, very clear in your communication. I have seen individuals who have only put one sentence down for each one, and that leaves our review teams in a difficult situation of possibly overlooking or underscoring a very, very good project. Please use your opportunity to spell out your case for support of your project. I can help you with that during the office hours. Please allow me to do that. We want you putting your best face forward. Next slide. The budget form for Building Capabilities, it's pretty self-explanatory. Artist work, contract services, studio rental, materials, other things. As you see, please refer in the guidelines to the types of projects that could be funded with Building Capabilities. And again, if you also have questions, there will be opportunity for you to ask questions about that. Next slide, please. The cultural equity form, however, because it is coming from federal funding, there's some extensive explanations there that you need to pay attention to that are also, again, listed in the artist guidelines. Next slide, please. The cultural equity budget form, even though it is a stipend or seen as a stipend, we do need to see specific work details of how you plan to spend the funding. It's not the equivalent of general operating costs. It has to be spelled out. Thank you. Next slide. Here's the section where you would attach your file for uploading your professional resume. If you have a video, you can attach it here also. You notice here that it says at a minimum of 1 document and a maximum of 5. So you need to plan accordingly. Some of you have so much stuff over many, many years of work. If you could pick out the most relevant pieces or most relevant projects that match the request, the project request, we would greatly appreciate it. Yeah, because 5 slots is not enough for many of you all, but 5 strategic slots that directly relate to what you're trying to undertake will give the reviewers a very, very good picture of what you're trying to accomplish. Next slide, please. Piper, can you go back? If you can see here, a PDF document is preferred. It really is. You would want to make that a practice of yours so that no one can alter what you submit. Okay. So go to the next slide. Thank you. Upload demonstration of artistic excellence. Here is where you shine. Here is where you also show what's related to, you almost have 3 more chances to also show your related work. What you feel best represents your artistic excellence, okay? And here are some examples, okay? That's really, really going to support your growth and what you're bringing to this wonderful project you're proposing. As a professional artist, of course. Next slide, please. So we get to the application confirmation. And these are very, very important bullet points here. You are saying yes to all of these things that are bullet pointed. And so you confirm that. And it says mark is complete, but you're not done. I've had artists, unfortunately, to walk away, artists and organizations to say, "Whoa, I'm finished," and they shut off the computer at this point. We don't want to do that. We want to fully submit it, complete project. So what you do is you could complete, mark as complete. Next slide, please. It says you want to see this slide that says submit application, because this is the, if you want to look at it and review it and click it, you can look at everything that you've done. If you just want to cancel because you're not ready to submit, you can. But if you're ready to submit, you click the submit button, the green button, and there's another step. Next slide. It'll show you, you get this confirmation screen. I call it the screen of success. You also get an email sent to the email of the account. Okay, so that's why it's very, very important that if you have registered using an email, that's the email that you're going to receive the application. confirmation. Next step. So here we are. As I said, everything opens up at 9 o'clock sharp on Monday. And the deadline is Thursday, March 24th at 6 p.m. Please take note of the time because it is unusual. Most grants are due at 5 p.m. or either 11:59. It's not 11:59 this year. It is 6 o'clock p.m. Okay. Here's another way to submit or to get to the grant portal. Take the time. Again, I want to stress, take the time. Our successful applicants are those who the reviewers actually say, I can tell that they put in significant time into this process. Okay, next slide. Here's my contact information. I am, again, Condra Parker, the Director of Grants Program and Development, for those of you who join later. Here's my contact information. During the course of this application, as spelled out in the grants guidelines, I cannot emphasize enough, on page 1 of the grants guidelines, my Friday office hours are from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. You would email me to request a time of about 10 minutes to 15 minutes so that we can have a brief discussion about your project. And we will be scheduling those every Friday, except February 18th. I'm going to be at QuiltCon. I'm so excited. And I will not be checking my emails at that time because I'll be at Phoenix with all my very closest quilting buddies. So, but I will definitely make myself available in my office hours. If notice that the office hours stop on March the 11th, that's still, it means I am still available, basically. If you can't get to me, I would rather for you to say, I really have a question now, email me. I will do that. I can still answer questions via email. I can still, if you're really, really stuck and need a walkthrough on anything, we want maximum success. We want maximum access to this program. And as you will be able to see, if you need any kind of accommodations for the application process, we need to know very, very early on. There is an accommodations form. The guidelines does specify that. The website does specify that, but I need to say that to you as individuals. There are accommodations that can be met, but they need to be met early. They cannot be considered on March the 24th. So we want to meet your needs. We want to increase your access, but help us help you. Next slide, please. So here we are at Q&A. Thank you, Erin.
All right, thank you, Condra. And first of all, I just wanted to say hello to everybody. I'm the Director of Programs and Outreach with Cultureworks. I didn't say that earlier, but my name is Erin, and I'm so lucky to be on this team and here with you all today. I recognize a lot of you, Barry from Milk River Arts, and Amy, and obviously we talked about Sam. But anyways, let's get into the questions. And if you have things pop up as we're talking, we have 12 more minutes. Want to be mindful of your time. So definitely pop your questions in the chat and we will get to them. We have a good bit of time left. So Sine Sear, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. What a beautiful name. Following up with some of the previous questions, I am wondering what the expectations are for the artwork once it's finished. In other words, Cultureworks. Sansaray, thank you. Thank you, Condra. Sansaray. All right, let's read it again. Following up with some of the previous questions, I'm wondering what the expectations are for the artwork once it's finished. In other words, does Cultureworks have clear requirements or expectations about what we do with the art once it's completed? Can it be sold? Can it be auctioned? Can it be donated, etc.?
I would say we don't own your art. It's when it comes to if the project, what are you stipulating in the project? What is the end, in beginning with the end in mind? If the end is an exhibit, then obviously that's still your art. For those of you all who have had exhibits sponsored by Cultureworks, such as Science Array, it probably would read the same way. It's still your art at the end of it. The body of work that you produced is the product. Now, Scott, if you want to clarify that or piggyback what I said.
Just going back to the earlier question that we need to confirm with the grants office, that thing about commercial, right? So the part of your question about can you sell it, I'm fairly certain we can, but I want to confirm that with the grants office at the NEA to make sure that, and I've already fired off an email to them hoping they might reply during this call. We'll see if we get something back in the next 10 minutes. That's probably unlikely, but we'll certainly circle back with those that have asked that question. And we probably need to put a FAQ on our website over time as well.
Good question.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sansaray, if you're there, if you want to ask any follow-ups, it's a good time for that.
Great, thank you. First, I will say thank you, Candy. Sometimes when you see my name sort of written out, it is really difficult to approach. So thanks for verifying. But yeah, so I have been fortunate enough to be a grant recipient previously, and I'm very gracious for that. And I just wanted to make sure that as I'm consuming the sort of additional pieces that have been added this year, that I'm very clear about making sure that I'm aligning with what is required. And I think what made me ask that question was the piece about the commercial focus. But what it sounds like to me that if we are approaching this from looking at cultural equity or the focus of our exhibition being the focus instead of, you know, taking the grant money to begin, like you said, an enterprise and having that be the focus of it, so that it sounds like the question has been answered, that if the focus of the exhibition is aligned with what we are looking to do to increase cultural equity and to serve underrepresented populations, then that's the focus, instead of it using the grant money to sort of enterprise, as Candy said. So yeah, thank you.
I also want to say that as an individual artist, the body of work has to be done in that period of time. Again, I can't stress that enough. I also want to stress that artists who are representative of the target groups mentioned, by their very nature, their voices being elevated is what is the purpose of the grant also. So many of you are from many different communities. Many of you as an individual are representing a different community that's listed there. Your voice being elevated in your work, and then your work being shared in the community in itself is the cultural equity.
Good point, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and I was going to say, welcome, Oz. We're toward the end of the presentation, but we still have time for questions if you want to jump in with anything. I know you're very familiar with Cultureworks, as we are with you, but anybody else as well? Maddie, Alexis, Sam, Amy. No pressure, but if you have a question, we're here. We have a few more minutes. Not always the case, so.
I know it's also a rainy Friday, and
yeah.
Everyone's probably ready to get off of the Brady Bunch
I know.
Squares collection here.
Here we go. We have one from Melissa. To clarify, is the commercial prohibition only on cultural equity grants or also on building capacities?
The nature of building capabilities is you're building infrastructure. So it's not necessarily going towards
It is specifically about it specifically applies to the cultural equity grants.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
All right. We'll just leave just about a minute more in case anyone has anything else.
I was wondering if I could come off of mute and ask the question. I'm just not a fast typer.
Yes, perfect.
I've been sitting here trying to type it really quick and I'm just not doing a good job. So I had a question. I know we talked about partnering with organizations or artists kind of doing something that is kind of in partnership with an organization. And I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification on it because like the idea that I have hypothetically is using basically like the truck of an organization to do programs in like parks and stuff. So is that's something that I could do? I could write it so that I would ask the organization to use their like truck equipment such, and then use that to go to other places. Does that make sense?
Right. I did want to talk a little bit more in depth. I know that you have been, or whether you're still currently affiliated with a specific organization that I know they may apply themselves.
Okay.
So yeah, we would need to talk about, is that double dipping if you were to pay the organization for the truck and they're also applying for another grant? So yeah, we can talk only for artists who are strongly linked to an organization that may also be an applicant. Please give me a call offline so we can talk about the nature of that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Just generally for anybody else that might be in that situation though that isn't affiliated, that would make sense to me, that an artist would want to collaborate with an organization, use a vehicle of some kind.
Oh yeah.
You would, going back to a point Condra made earlier, if you're relying on that vehicle, you'd want some kind of letter of commitment from the organization saying that, yep, we're on board with this project and we're planning to share the vehicle with them and so forth.
All right, just a couple more minutes. I know that silence is uncomfortable, but also it offers us the chance to think, do I have one more question? So we're happy to sit here just for a little bit longer in case anybody has anything pop up. It's just good to have the time with Condra face to face.
I have a quick question that I could just ask quicker than I could type as well. So I'm not a fast typer either. Can we speak to what happens if we are awarded a grant and there are unforeseeable changes? I know no one's used to that right now, but what happens? What happens if we look up and there's a huge portion of what we're doing that has changed or needs to change? And what does that look like?
Condra, can I take that one, please?
Yeah.
So we know stuff happens, right? We know now, though, that more stuff happens than used to happen, right? There's more uncertainty than there ever was. And so we hope that you will plan for to have contingencies so that you don't just have one path forward. We know stuff's going to happen. We do want to try and work with you to make it successful. So if something comes up, talk with Condra early on. As an awardee, talk with us early on so we can help problem solve around that. We asked the very same question of the NEA, right? So we have obligations to the NEA and our other funders, and their answer is we want to work with you to make it successful. That said, there are time boundaries that we are held to, and therefore we need to hold our artists to. And so we want to figure out how to make it happen within the funding period. But we know it may not work out exactly like we planned, but hopefully we can meet the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish.
I think what's very, very, when you are awarded, depending on what program you're awarded, you will be given a letter that will tell you where your funding is coming from. If your funding is coming from the NEA grant, it has to be, the project has to be completed in that time frame. And I know that because of 2020, by the very nature, 2020 and 21, we've been, given all kinds of grace. However, with that federal funding, we need to be on it because it has to be, there's no extensions that we can be given because of the reporting that we have to give to the federal government has to be done. So if you see that you've been given, number one, you've been given funding that we will tell you in the award letter has federal funding as a source, just know that it's very restrictive on the time frame. But you would know by that December mid-year report, you would be able to tell me that, hey, Condra, Scott, things aren't going the way they should go. We will work. That's I would hope that you would know by the end of the first quarter, by October 1, that things aren't going well. We're going to be communicating. Believe me, I'm going to be your best friend. And so you could tell, okay, how are things going, blah, blah, even though I'm going to check in with you almost monthly, all right? It's a challenge and we get it. And this is the first time we're doing it. But please don't think that I'm nagging you or anything. I want success for you, and I want success for Cultureworks, and I want another NEA grant, okay? So we will, Amy is like, yay. So, and Alexis, I look forward to what you're going to produce too. Because guess what? This path that we're walking right now is going to make you all better and stronger for any other grant that you apply for. Okay. This is the grants boot camp here. Okay. And I tend to be the bad cop and Scott tends to be the good cop. But in the end, we've heard it over and over again that people are appreciative of our approach because we're strengthening you. That is our mission. So I want to end it there, my comment.
Thanks, Condra. I see we are at time. Sansari, I hope that answered your question.
It did, thank you.
Great. Yes, I do. Condra and I have a nice game of good cop, bad cop, but at the end of the day, we are here to strengthen you, the artists, to drive a greater impact. So get into the program on Monday, get out there, start looking at the guidelines today. Be ready to start applying and then let us know what questions you have. With that, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you to my team. Thank you to Condra and Aaron and Piper for all your help getting us prepared for this. And we wish you all the best and keep doing what you do. Thanks very much.
Okay. I was removing people politely. There's like an option to report to Zoom, but you're like, I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to remove you quietly because you're walked away from your computer. How's everybody?
Great.
Good.
Good.
I think we lost Condra. Shoot, she's the star of the show.